Hello everyone, and welcome to my first ever YouTube series! Game of Thrones. It's only one of the two most popular TV shows on the air right now, and it is coming back very, very soon. Season 7 is right around the corner, set to unveil its first episode on July 16th, and let me tell you, I could not be more excited. The trailer just dropped the other day, but I thought, there might be some people who've heard a lot about this show, but might not know exactly what it's all about. So the show has gone through 6 seasons so far, and it only has 2 left. But let me tell you, that has in no way stopped it from arguably being the best thing that has happened to the world of television, not just television, but for media in a very long time. From its epic scope, to the deeply layered characters, to the vast amounts of stories that never seem to bore, to the dragons, White Walkers, and tons of boobs, this show has proved itself again and again, year after year, ever since it debuted all the way back in spring of 2011. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss were able to take George R.R. Martin's magnum opus and turn it into probably the best bit of fantasy the world has gotten since the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And so, to honor and pay tribute to my favorite TV show currently on the air, I will be starting my first ever YouTube series, A Song of Ice and Fire, a recap told in 6 parts. Starting today, week by week, I will be recapping each season of this spectacular spectacle, catching you guys up on the characters you may have forgotten about, the storylines that may be a bit fuzzy to your memories, the differences between the books and the show, and what was better in which, and all the other stuff somewhere in the middle. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time, so let's dive right into it. Here is A Song of Ice and Fire, a recap in 6 parts. And for all of those of you who are somehow unable to get a clue, this will be very spoiler heavy. So, let's get into it. This is Season 1. So this series takes place in the fictional land of Westeros, one of 2 continents that exist in this version of the world. Westeros largely resembles both North and South America if they were merged. The weather is extremely varied, as summers and winters can last years on end rather than months. The country is split into 7 major regions: the North, the Riverlands, the Westerlands, the Eyrie, the Stormlands, the Reach, the Iron Islands, and Dorne, so technically 8. Each of the regions is ruled by one of the 8 major families: the Starks, the Tullys, the Lannisters, the Arryns, the Baratheons, the Tyrells, the Greyjoys, and the Martells. To the east of Westeros, across the body of water known as the Narrow Sea, is the only other continent in the known world, the massive sprawling continent known as Essos, which contains the 9 free cities, the old ruin of Valyria, the Dothraki City, the slave cities, Ashai, and much more. To the north of Westeros lies a massive structure called the Wall, a 700-foot tall ice structure that protects the realm from everything to the far north, such as the wild, unstructured people known as the Wildlings, and other more supernatural things that the people of Westeros have forgotten about, such as giants, wargs, and White Walkers. The Wall is managed by the Night's Watch, an ancient brotherhood of men who banded together long ago to protect the ancient realm, the entire realm, from what lies beyond. It is here that our story begins. So the first shot of the episode and the series sees 3 rangers beginning their daily patrol beyond the Wall due to rumors that several wildlings have been rumored to have deserted their villages. The rangers end up discovering the remains of a wildling village before they were set upon by some unseen force. 2 of them are slaughtered, and the 3rd one manages to escape, but not before he sees the ultimate threat of what is to come: a White Walker, an ancient supernatural being with the ability to bring people back from the dead. The surviving ranger successfully manages to escape south of the Wall, breaking his Night's Watch vow in the process, which makes deserting the Watch punishable by death. He is caught by the reigning family of the North, the Starks, the Lords of Winterfell and Wardens of the North. The head Stark is Lord Eddard Stark, played by Sean Bean. His family and house consists of his wife Catelyn, played by Michelle Fairley, and his 6 children: Robb, Richard Madden, Sansa, Sophie Turner, Arya, Maisie Williams, Bran, Isaac Hempstead Wright, Rickon, Art Parkinson, and Jon Snow, Kit Harington. Jon is a bastard, which basically means that he's Ned's son born out of wedlock. The other residents of Winterfell includes Ned's ward, Theon Greyjoy, played by Alfie Allen, Maester Luwin, Sir Roderick Cassell, and slow-witted stable boy and servant Hodor. After executing the Night's Watch deserter, Ned returns to Winterfell and receives a letter that the king of the entire realm of Westeros and his old friend Robert Baratheon is on his way north to visit Ned, due to the fact that Ned and Robert's old friend and Robert's hand of the king, Jon Arryn, has just passed away. The hand of the king is basically the king's advisor and his most trusted and loyal ally. About 20 years before, Ned, Robert, and Jon Arryn joined forces in rebellion against against the former king of Westeros, Eddard Targaryen II, also known as the Mad King, due to the fact that Aerys' eldest son and heir, Rhaegar, kidnapped Ned's sister Lyanna, who was betrothed to Robert, and when Ned's father and elder brother, Lord Rickard and Brandon Stark, rode south to demand her return, Aerys had them both killed. The three of them successfully rallied the rest of Westeros in the infamous Robert's Rebellion, which all but ended when Robert killed Rhaegar in the Battle of the Trident, caving his head in with his infamous warhammer. So Robert arrives in Winterfell with his family, his wife, Queen Cersei Lannister, played by Lena Headey, his three children, Joffrey, played by Jack Gleeson, and his two siblings, Myrcella and Tommen, as well as Cersei's two brothers, her twin brother Jaime, played by Nikolai Coster-Waldau, and her younger brother, the dwarf Tyrion, played by Peter Dinklage, as well as Joffrey's personal protector, Sandor the Hound Clegane, played by Rory McCann. Jaime is infamously known as the Kingslayer, due to the fact that at the end of the rebellion, he stabbed King Aerys in the back despite being in his Kingsguard, which are the king's personal bodyguards. Despite getting a pardon for Robert, this earned him disdain from almost every major knight in the kingdom, particularly from Ned, who prides himself on being an honorable man. Upon arriving in Winterfell, Robert reveals the reasons why he's ridden all the way north, reasons for which Ned had already guessed. Robert wants Ned to be his new hand of the king, as well as the idea to wed Ned's daughter Sansa to Robert's son Joffrey. Ned is apprehensive at first, but his decision is quickly made when Catelyn receives another letter, a secret letter, this time from her sister, Lysa, Jon Arryn's widow. Lysa has fled back to the Eyrie, the Arryns' ancestral castle, out of fear for her life, due to the fact that she believes the Lannisters are responsible for Jon's death, not natural causes as originally thought. This causes Ned to quickly accept Robert's offer, intent on finding out what the hell is going on, which causes the Starks to go their separate ways. Ned heads south with the king, taking Sansa and Arya with him, while Cat stays behind with the rest of the family, except for Jon, who decides that he wants to join the Night's Watch due to the fact that he feels that he's too old to stay at Winterfell, heading there alongside Ned's only surviving sibling Benjen, a ranger of the Night's Watch, as well as Tyrion, who both wants to see the wall for himself and because he feels a certain connection with Jon. Unfortunately, as all of this is about to commence, disaster strikes as the day before everybody is set to leave, Bran, Ned's second youngest son and an avid climber, climbs the highest tower in Winterfell, where he witnesses Cersei and Jaime having sex. In order to silence him, Jaime pushes him from the window, causing him to fall at least 30 feet to the ground. Bran survives, but he's paralyzed from the waist down. Meanwhile, across the Narrow Sea, in the free city of Pentos, we are introduced to the last of the main characters, Daenerys Targaryen. Her and her older brother Viserys are the last living Targaryens, surviving children of the Mad King who were spirited away the night that the Red Keep in King's Landing was sacked. Viserys, along with Magister Illyrio Mopatis, an ally of theirs that they're staying with in Pentos, has plotted to marry Daenerys to Khal Drogo, a Khal with one of the largest Dothraki hordes in Essos. The Dothraki are basically like the Mongols, massive warriors who are especially known for conquering on horseback and for raping every woman they see when they conquer. Viserys' hope is that by wedding Dany to the Khal will reward him with an army to take back to Westeros. Unfortunately, Viserys has the misfortune of being both very much like his father, angry, lustful of his sister, borderline psychopathic, and also being very stupid, misunderstanding the Dothraki customs and assuming that Drogo will instantaneously give him an army, while in reality the Dothraki customs say that Drogo can choose when and if he will follow Viserys to command his forces. It also doesn't help that Viserys views the Dothraki, a very proud and violent race, as savage dogs. Dany, on the other hand, while extremely frightened at first, eventually warms up to the Khal and falls in love with him, becoming pregnant with his child in the process. Along for the ride on Dany's journey is Ser Jorah Mormont, an exile from Westeros who is forced to become a fugitive after he sold several poachers he caught on his land into slavery. So back in Westeros, Ned arrives in King's Landing, the capital of Westeros, where he meets up with the other members of Robert's small council. Robert's younger brother Renly, a closeted homosexual, Grand Maester Pycelle, played by Julian Glover from Indiana Jones and Empire Strikes Back, Varys, the spy master, and Lord Peter Littlefinger Baelish, played by Aidan Gillen, the master of coin. Here, Ned learns that Robert has basically bankrupted the kingdom, with the crown being $6 million in debt to various sources, made worse by the fact that Robert wants to hold a tourney to celebrate Ned's arrival that is only going to cost more. This adds to Ned's fears that Robert is not the man he remembers him to be, as in the years that Ned and Robert have been apart, Robert has become severely overweight and a belligerent drinker and womanizer, with at least 8 different known bastards throughout the city. Back in Winterfell, an assassin breaks into Bran's room and attempts to murder him, but Catelyn manages to hold him off until the assassin is killed by Bran's pet direwolf, Summer. Basically, on the way back from executing that Night's Watch deserter way back in the beginning, Ned and his little party ran into a dead direwolf with 6 puppies and gave each one of them to one of his children, and Bran's direwolf's name is Summer. So this causes Cat to consult Robb, Theon, Maester Luwin, and Sir Roderick on Lysa's letter, before she departs to King's Landing to warn Ned and find out who hired the assassin. Upon reaching King's Landing, she meets up with Ned and Littlefinger. Littlefinger's a childhood friend of hers who's always had feelings for her. With help from Varys, Littlefinger reveals to Cat that the knife that was used in the attempt on Bran's life was his, that he lost in a bet to Tyrion, making Tyrion the prime suspect. Cat later apprehends Tyrion when she runs into him in a tavern on her way back to Winterfell, due to the fact that several knights in the tavern were sworn to her her father, Lord Hoster Tully, the Lord of the Riverlands. Ned, meanwhile, continues his investigation into Jon Arryn's murder and discovers several clues left behind by Jon Arryn that all seem to lead back to Robert's bastards, including Jon's dying words, "The seed is strong." Unfortunately, a series of setbacks happen. Robert learns of Daenerys' pregnancy through information supplied by Jorah Mormont, who is secretly a spy for Varys, and demands her to be killed out of his paranoia and hatred for the Targaryens, something that Ned is very much against due to his honor, causing him to step down as Hand of the King. Before he departs from the city, however, he visits yet another of Robert's bastards with Littlefinger, when he and his men are attacked by Jaime Lannister and several of his forces, due to Jaime's outrage at Catelyn apprehending Tyrion, due to the close bond they share. This results in Ned getting a spear through his leg, and most of his men are killed. To the far north, at the Wall, Jon has a hard time acclimating to the Wall's conditions since he discovers that the once proud Night's Watch has essentially become a dumping ground for the realm's criminals. However, he soon learns that the key to getting everyone's respect is to help them better themselves, not to be better than them, and he ends up befriending several other recruits, including Pip, Gren, Dolores Ed, and Samuel Tarly, a rather fat recruit who was forced to join the Watch by his father, the vindictive Lord Randall Tarly, in the hopes that he would become more of a man in his eyes. Jon's attempts to bond with his fellow Night's Watch recruits earns him disdain from their trainer, Sir Alliser Thorne, but praise from the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Jeor Mormont, who also happens to be Jorah Mormont's uncle. This allows Jon to be promoted to the Lord Commander's personal steward once he is inducted into the Watch fully, which Jon sees as an insult at first because he wasn't made a ranger, but soon realizes with the help from Sam that Mormont is actually prepping him to become the next Lord Commander. After taking their vows, Jon and the rest of his sworn brothers discover two stiff corpses right outside the wall with blue eyes and take them back to examine them. During the night, however, the corpses rise and attempt to kill Mormont, but Jon manages to stop them by burning them alive. Back in King's Landing, Ned awakens to discover that Jaime has fled the city to join up with his father, Tywin Lannister, who has gathered together his troops to bring Tyrion back. Tyrion, meanwhile, had been brought by Catelyn to the Eyrie to stand trial for Bran's attempted murder, as well as to bear the brunt for Jon Arryn's murder, but Tyrion manages to work his way out of it by demanding trial by combat with the help of a sellsword, Westerosi word for bounty hunter, named Bronn, which is basically when you know you're guilty but you need a quick way out. You can have somebody represent you to fight another person of the opposition's choosing, with your fate decided by whether your fighter wins or loses. Ned attempts to reason with Robert, but Robert decides to go on a hunt, leaving Ned in charge and completely disregarding the fact that his kingdom is dissolving into chaos. After learning of Tywin's attacks on the Riverlands, he dispatches Beric Dondarrion to serve the King's justice of both Tywin and Sir Gregor the Mountain Clegane, the Hound's brother and the largest man in the Seven Kingdoms, as well as Tywin's closest lieutenant. Ned then finally manages to decipher the truth that Jon Arryn died for, as well as the reason for why Bran was paralyzed and almost killed. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, all of Robert's kids, are actually not Robert's kids, but rather products of incest, as they are fathered all by Jaime Lannister out of his incestuous relationship with the Queen. Ned confronts Cersei with this and warns her to leave, but unfortunately he is too late to tell Robert, who is mortally wounded by a wild boar while hunting and dies shortly thereafter, due to the fact that Cersei's cousin Lancel, also Robert's squire, kept giving him extremely strong wine to drink while hunting in order to ensure his death. Ned attempts to garner Littlefinger's support in order to wrest the throne from Joffrey, who has now been crowned king, but Littlefinger betrays him, resulting in the City Watch slaughtering the rest of his men and Ned being locked in the dungeons. Sansa is held captive, but Arya manages to escape with help from her sword teacher, Syrio Forel. Ned's capture and Robert's death sends the Seven Kingdoms into a complete frenzy. Both of Robert's younger brothers, Stannis and Renly, declare for the crown, despite the fact that Stannis has the true claim due to Joffrey's bastard parentage. Also in response to his father's capture, Robb gathers up his bannermen and proceeds south to wage war with the Lannisters in order to get Ned back. Tyrion, who rendezvoused with his father in the south, participates in one of these battles. However, the entire fight is indeed a diversion so that Robb's forces could circle around Tywin's and free Riverrun from the Lannisters, capturing Jaime in the process. This unfortunately does nothing to spur Ned's fate, as he is forced to confess to attempted treason despite his means due to the fact that the Lannisters hold Sansa captive, and Varys warns Ned in the dungeons that if Ned confesses, he may only be sent to the wall, but if he doesn't, Sansa will die. Ned confesses to treason in front of an entire massive crowd, but rather than show mercy, Joffrey, who proves to be a vile, despicable, and truly awful human being, has Ned decapitated right in front of the crowd, which includes Sansa and Arya. Arya is then taken away from the capital by Yoren, a member of the Night's Watch who is looking for more recruits and a friend of Ned's. In response to his father's death, Robb is crowned king in the north by his bannermen. Jon attempts to ride south in order to help Robb, but is stopped and brought back by his brothers in arms before he can break his vow. Lord Commander Mormont then tells Jon that he is planning a massive expedition north of the the Wall to find out what's happening with the wildlings and the White Walkers, as well as find Benjen Stark and several other Rangers who have gone missing beyond the Wall, and he wants Jon to go with him. In the south, Tywin sends Tyrion to King's Landing to act as Hand of the King in his place in order to get Joffrey under control and make sure he doesn't do something else stupid that could put the kingdom in further jeopardy. Across the Narrow Sea, Viserys attempts to force Drogo to give him an army by threatening Daenerys' life, stupidly thinking that because the Dothraki cannot draw blades in their sacred home of Vice Dothrak that he is fine. Drogo responds to this by melting several of his gold chains in a cooking pot and pouring the molten gold over Viserys, smoldering and killing him. After this, Daenerys is almost poisoned by an assassin posing as a wine merchant, but Jorah manages to stop him due to having a change of heart about Daenerys. This also causes Drogo to have a change of heart, as he wasn't planning on crossing the Narrow Sea due to the Dothraki's massive fear of salt water. However, this assassination attempt changes his mind, and he promises to help Daenerys get back the Seven Kingdoms. On the ride back west, however, while the Dothraki are looting and pillaging all the local villages, Daenerys attempts to stop Drogo's fellow Dothraki from raping some of the women, which causes Drogo to get into a fight on his wife's behalf. Despite winning the fight, Drogo gets a massive shoulder wound which festers and ends up infecting him. Desperate, Dany appeals to Mirri Maz Duur, a Lazarean god's wife and sorceress whom she saved from being raped by Drogo's Khalasar to help save Drogo's life. She uses a spell to save Drogo that causes Dany to miscarry, and the result is Drogo becoming a vegetable. In response to this, Dany has Mirri attached to Drogo's funeral pyre and walks onto it herself, placing 3 stone dragon eggs onto the pyre as well that she received at her wedding feast. In the morning, once the fire has died down, Drogo and Mirri are ash, yet Daenerys is perfectly fine, and the dragon eggs have hatched, giving the world the first dragons that they have seen in close to 1,000 years. So that was season 1 of Game of Thrones. There was a lot of stuff that happens, a lot of characters, a lot of locations, and a lot of stuff to keep track of. But overall, it is definitely one of the best first seasons of television I have ever seen, and still have seen up to this point. It did a great job of adapting the massive first book of the series, A Game of Thrones, almost to a T. The characters are all so fully developed after only 10 episodes. The acting is pitch perfect all around the board, and despite the fact that it doesn't tell you everything, it so perfectly sets up everything that is yet to come in such a fantastic way. And that is officially episode 1 of my Game of Thrones recap. Make sure you guys stay tuned in the weeks to come, because if you thought there was a lot that goes down in this first season, you ain't seen nothing yet.